Persona 5 Royal has a total of 23 different Arcanas, and I will try to beat the entire game using only a single one of them per playthrough. Welcome to another video of the Persona 5 Royal Arcana Challenge. After beating the game using only the Chariot in our first video of the series, I decided to let you guys decide on which Arcana you want to see next. And the result of that voting, needless to say, really wasn't shocking. You guys really love to see me suffer, because the highest voted Arcana was the Tower. Now, before we look into why the Tower is such a pain, let's quickly recap the rules for everybody who didn't watch the first entry of the series yet, which you totally should, by the way, right after you finish the video. We are only going to be allowed to use Tower Personas, which includes not only battles, but also fusion, electric chair, gallows, or even during a holdup when it comes to persona or item negotiation. The exception to this are treasure demons, as they are solely used to rank a persona of a specific arcana, either a rank up or down. The only other party member allowed is the one of the specified arcana, which in the case of the Tower is nobody, so this will be a solo Joker run. We are only allowed to rank up the Tower confidant Shinya. Exceptions to this are all arcanas that unlock and or progress automatically, and Maruki, who we need to max in order to unlock the Royal exclusive content. Until we get access to the first persona of said arcana, only Arsene may be used. And of course, we also have the classic run rules like having the difficulty on hard, banning DLC personas, as well as no new game plus. The run officially starts once we get to spend our time freely, which is after the Belphegor battle, since we are very limited with our options during the intro and can't really do an awful lot. With all that being said, let's head into the run now. We start the game, select our difficulty and get to name our protagonist, and because I couldn't really come up with anything fitting for Joker, I just went with Arcade King. While we got the opening cutscenes running in the background, let's take a quick look into the Tower personas and what kind of options we're going to get in this run. At first glance, we got a total of 9 available personas, but when we look a little closer, we can see that 2 of those are DLC personas, and 2 are advanced fusions which are not allowed, so that brings our total down to an astonishing 5. Not only that, but the Tower is also the Arcana with the highest starting level persona in the entire game, with Belphegor at level 37. Only the Judgment and the Tower Arcanas have starting personas at level 30 plus, so this means we will have to deal with Arsene for quite a while. Before we jump into the run though, I want to give a quick shout out to this video's sponsor Wiimote. Wiimote is a desktop app that enhances your games and lets you customize gameplay so that you can play exactly how you want to. For me personally, it's a great tool when preparing for challenge runs or for theory crafting in case I have troubles getting through hard bosses and need to test out different kinds of strategies to see whether or not this could work in a real run. The app itself is free and comes with plenty of great features, and if you want even more precise control, Wiimote Pro unlocks advanced features to fine-tune your gameplay even further. I have already used Wiimote a couple of years ago when doing Final Fantasy X-2 challenge runs. When I got stuck, it was a very handy tool when it came to theory crafting about how to approach certain boss fights within the limitations of the challenge. Want to try out different strategies, but the boss keeps wiping you before you get the proper chance to test it out? No problem. Just make yourself invincible and start testing things to see if they could potentially work. Wiimote finds your entire game library automatically, and you can start modding your game with a single click. All changes made will go into effect immediately, and you can get going right away. Simply toggle mods on and off in the desktop app, the mobile app, or through the overlay. Wiimote also features interactive maps, which can help you locate hidden items or objectives for easier access. Whether you want to quickly try out a new playstyle, or just experiment around for challenge runs or other things you want to do in the game, Wiimote helps you out a lot. Get Wiimote for free using my link wiimote.gg/Ragnar in the description or the pinned comment, and start customizing your single player games today. Big thanks again to Wiimote for sponsoring this video, and now let's head back into the Tower Arcana challenge. I also quickly want to talk about some of the feedback I've gotten during the Chariot run, with the most prominent one being that we should allow advanced fusions for ultimate personas. While the feedback itself is definitely viable, and I myself thought about allowing advanced fusions at first, There were a couple of reasons why I decided against them eventually, other than just not wanting to grab personas of other Arcanas. First of all, the majority of high-leveled advanced fusions would require us to rank up the strength confidant of the Twin Wardens up to rank 8, which would mean we'd have to get a crap ton of other personas not eligible for use to even get there. Not only that, but some advanced fusions also need ultimate persona from other Arcanas as fusion ingredient, like Lucifer, who needs Satan, and Metatron, both of which are ultimate personas from other Arcanas. Then there are also several Arcanas which don't even have an advanced fusion as ultimate persona, or we can just get them the regular way via Treasure Demon, like the Tower Arcana for example, so this is also going to influence the ranking of certain Arcanas towards the end. To sum it all up, allowing advanced fusions would make things rather complicated and also go against some of the other rules, so the overall decision was to just flat out ban them to avoid further confusion. By the way, I am once again taking suggestions for which Arcana is going to be up next, so if you want to cast your vote, feel free to let me know in the comments. With that being said, I think we had enough theory talk now, so let's finally head back into the game when the first mission officially starts and we get to spend our time freely. We head into the clinic to buy a couple of Recover 100 and upgrade our equipment at the airsoft shop. Like mentioned in the previous video, while we banned DLC personas due to them being ridiculously overpowered for the most part, we are still allowed to grab the free DLC item box, though to be fair, even those are mostly used for the costume to change up the battle music. Since there is basically nothing else useful to do at the moment, we head straight back into the palace and get this thing going, though we are quickly running into the first problem. Joker by himself really can't do an awful lot in most fights. With Arsene, we only have access to physical, gun and curse attacks, and unfortunately there are not a lot of enemies weak to any of those types in the castle. This becomes apparent rather quickly after getting to the next safe room. We usually need 2 hits to take out a single enemy, and Joker himself also takes quite some damage from the enemy's attacks as well. The party members can still serve as unwanted meat shields for now, but if we get unlucky and Joker gets targeted twice in a row, it's probably game over. It certainly doesn't help that we don't have access to any healing skills either. And just to show you how quickly we can potentially get wiped here, a back-to-back attack against Joker is all we need, and it's already game over. Because of this, I decided to grind in the first area for a little to get Joker a bit more bulky to get through the rest of the dungeon. The majority of enemies here can be taken out with Joker's gun, and we only need to clean up whatever is left after. But even that doesn't have to mean anything, as we can also just game over here if we get a bit unlucky. So needless to say, I think it's easy to see how much of a pain the start of this challenge is already. Eventually, we made it to the next safe room where we now have a good opportunity to grind levels if needed. The strong shadow of this dungeon Barif gives 60 experience, which is quite a bit for this point of the game. It also usually targets the other party members first before focusing on Joker, which gives us quite a few turns to get damage in. With stun guns, we can also shock the enemy and then put technical damage on it with cleave until it's down. Up next is the first mini-boss of the game with Archangel. The enemy always starts charging up, then single target attacks a party member before composing and starting all over again. We start the battle by casting Secunda and then go to work with damage. The evasion debuff could lead to the enemy missing its attack a couple of times, which gives Joker some extra leeway to put out damage before going down. Unfortunately, the Secunda didn't work out all too well, as Archangel is still one-shotting party members left and right. Luckily, it seems that the mini-boss also targets all other party members first, so while our first attempt didn't quite work out, the strategy for battle number 2 was rather simple. Just go all out on cleave and hope to get the enemy down before it gets a chance to take down Joker. Even though we missed twice, we still barely do enough damage and are able to beat Archangel on the last possible turn before another game over. Once we reach the tower portion of the palace, we start skipping a lot of encounters. For most enemies, we can't hit any weaknesses, and with our regular attacks only doing about half damage, the battles aren't really worth doing. We can always grind on Barif if needed, so we skip the majority and only battle the ones that we can easily hit weaknesses on. Up next, we have to get through the 2 Eligor battles. The basic idea here is to use Dream Needle and hope for a sleep proc in order to deal technical damage to the enemy. It takes 3 attacks until we get the sleep to stick, but once that is done, a technical hit and a follow-up attack are enough to beat the enemy. Same strategy goes for Allegor number 2, except we get to hit the sleep on the very first try here. After finishing the enemy off with our gun, the only thing left to do in this palace is beat the Willseed Gatekeeper, which is a slime. The strategy in this battle is the same as with Allegor before. Try to put the enemy to sleep using Dream Needle, and then follow up with technical hits. While we do get some nice sleep procs, eventually the status doesn't stick, and Slime one-shots Joker. On attempt number 2, we got a bit luckier when it came to status ailments, and a few turns later, Slime is down and the last Willseed is retrieved. And this might actually be a rather important one. First of all, it gives the party member wearing it access to Diorama, which is huge, considering we literally don't have a single native healing spell on any Tower personas. Once we bring it to Josei later, it will also additionally come with a Tarkaja effect, so I expect this one to pull quite some weight down the line. With that, we could theoretically head towards the palace boss now, but with level 10 I am pretty sure we stand no chance in a solo setup. All things considered, I would like to think that we probably need to get somewhere around level 15 to be able to get through, so we head back to the berries from earlier to grind some more experience. We still have a couple of stun guns left in our inventory that we can use to deal technical damage to the enemy to get it down before it gets to Joker. The fact that the enemy seemingly always seems to target Joker last certainly helps things as well. During Arsene's level ups, we also save scum and try to get a few extra points on endurance to get Joker a bit more tanky. If there was anything I noticed during dungeon progression, it is that Joker takes a lot of damage from most enemies, so a few extra points in endurance certainly won't hurt. Since it's taking quite some time to get additional levels once you reach a certain point, I decided that a level 13 Joker with a level 10 Arsene is enough to attempt the Kamoshida battle. I saved on a different slot though to make sure we can easily go back and grind some more if we're not strong enough to get through the battle yet. In the clinic, we stack up on some more Recover at 100 and then visit the laundromat to wash our chunk. The Duke's Coat not only gives quite some defense, but also an extra plus 30 max HP, both of which will definitely come in handy against Kamoshida. On the following day, we sent the calling card and are then back into the palace for major boss battle number 1. In phase 1, Kamoshida will attack twice each turn, but we still have all party members up, so this is probably not going to be the biggest issue. With Joker being the only one attacking though, it takes quite some time until we push him into phase 2, where we can now target a trophy, at which point An is already down, and the other party members follow shortly afterwards. After Kamoshida buffs his attack, Joker on a 3-hit volleyball attack takes almost 90 damage, so every time he gets hit, we have to make sure to heal up. Thanks to Arsene's high agility, there is a decent chance that Joker also dodges attacks every now and then, and after a while, the trophy is down and we transition into the next phase. Since we needed to heal, we couldn't guard with Joker, but even an unprotected Golden Spike doesn't do more than 100 damage without buffs, so we should be good to go here. Up next we need to get rid of Shiho, so the strategy here is to attack her with Cleave, and then use the one more to heal up in order to take the next spike. Once Shiho is taken out, we transition into the last phase, and with Joker being solo, there obviously is no way for anybody to steal the crown, so we have to punch our way through the enemy the old-fashioned way. The battle is relatively simple at this point, as Kamoshida will only attack with Golden Knife, which only does roughly 50 damage to Joker. So this basically means that every 2 turns we need to throw in a heal and we should be good to go. I also tried putting up Secunda to increase the dodging chance, but I couldn't really notice any difference, so it's probably for the better to just keep attacking and healing. The battle takes quite a while, but with the fixed pattern there really isn't anything huge that could surprise us at this point any longer. Towards the end, we unfortunately ran out of Recover 100, so for the last couple of heals we have to use some of the beads from the free DLC. I would have liked to save those for later, but overall it shouldn't matter all too much, and after slashing on Kamoshida for what feels like forever, he is finally down and we successfully complete dungeon number 1. This was a rather good start, but I am sure things will quickly turn for the worse once we reach the museum, but more on that when we get there. For now, we have quite some downtime. Since we can't actually leave LeBlanc during evenings until Kamoshida confesses, we only have very limited options. Luckily, we can always work out in our room, which will be the main evening activity throughout most of the game, in order to quickly get our max HP up. Since the Royal Arcana doesn't need any extra social stats, the only thing we need is decent knowledge for the exam rewards and max proficiency to max out our technical rank later on. During the day, we mostly go to work to make some extra money since none of the allowed confidants have unlocked yet. Every once in a while, we also make infiltration tools during evenings to get our proficiency up early. Ideally, we want to be able to max out our technical rank as soon as we unlock Kichioji later, so starting early is definitely a good idea. Once Kamoshida confesses his crimes, we go out to celebrate and name our party, and yeah, I'm really not a creative person, sorry everybody. That being said, we also automatically unlock Sojiro's confidant, and with that we're finally allowed to go outside during evenings. Overall, this is not going to make much of a difference though, since our evening activities will still mostly revolve around working out or crafting infiltration tools. We head into Mementos for the first time and have to complete our first request here as well. The battle against the Barian is not a problem, as we once again try to use Dream Needle to put the enemy to sleep. Sledgehammer still deals a very decent amount of damage though, and after getting an unlucky back-to-back attack on Joker, we game over here. On attempt number 2, it took Joker 4 Dream Needles until his sleep finally stuck, but luckily the enemy spread his attacks around to all party members this time, and were able to barely beat it a couple of turns later. We ace the exams, and shortly afterwards unlock Maruki. Like mentioned in the rules, his confidant is the exception and will be maxed in order to unlock the royal content later on. We button mash Morgana, and a couple of days later we meet Yusuke, and with that we're basically ready to head into dungeon number 2. And you can already see the issues here early on, as we have to skip quite a few encounters because we got no means to get any one more of them with weakness hits. While we do have the ailment gun now, this one is only situationally useful, so more often than not, we run from encounters. We also get our first treasure demon here, and while that is definitely a nice thing to have, it doesn't really help us at all at the moment, considering we still got over 20 levels until we gain access to the first Tau persona. Once we reach the barrier, we could technically leave the palace, but before we do so, we go back to the second save room to grind a bit until we get our Zen to level 13. The enemy formations in here have a lot of Huapo and Shisas in them, oftentimes with disaster shadows included, so those are the best encounters to farm experience for now, thanks to their gun and curse weakness. Once that is done, we head into the encounter against Nue next. The strategy here is to throw a Molotov cocktail for a 1 more, and then try to hit the enemy with physical attacks. Compared to earlier battles, this one is rather easy, and shortly afterwards Yusuke awakens to his persona. The battle against Ippon Datura and the Kappa Tangos is a bit trickier since we still have no access to any AoE attacks. With the help of freeze sprays and the physical attack, we can take out the Kappa Tango within a turn, so we try to get rid of all of them before focusing on the boss. The majority of them will use Tsukukasha to buff their evasion, but once they're knocked down, you have 100% accuracy, so that doesn't really matter all too much. Once Ippon Datura is the last enemy left standing, we focus on physical attacks and hope for a lucky crit. Since the enemy spreads its attacks out quite a bit, we're not really in any danger, or so I thought at least, because Sledgehammer almost wiped Joker and we barely survived on 4 HP, so we put on extra Secunda to decrease its hit rate as well. We get a double dodge by Joker and continuing throwing out cleaves until the enemy is done and the battle is won. Before heading back into the palace, we once again make a trip to the laundromat to get ourselves some new armor, and then head back into Mementos first to clear the requests we have gotten in the meantime. With Yusuke joining the party now, we can also finally start removing all other party members from the party, so from here on out, it will be a true solo Joker run. The main reason for coming in here though is to unlock the full power of Kamoshida's Will Seed accessory after bringing it to Josei. Like mentioned earlier, its diorama spell also comes with an additional Tarokasha once fully upgraded, and a heal with an attack buff included certainly sounds like a great tool to have in our inventory. Once we're done with everything, We leave mementos and head back into the palace on the following day. The first mini-boss is an encounter against Kurama Tengu, who is accompanied by 2 Kappa Tengus. The plan is to shock everybody using our ailment gun, and then get rid of Kurama Tengu as quickly as somewhat possible. The Kappa Tengus like to cast Rage, which is nice on the one hand because of the damage increase. On the other hand, this also makes Kappa Tengu's Magarula pretty much one-shot Joker. Luckily, we were able to dodge the attack, and after putting up another shock with a stun gun, we were able to get rid of the mini-boss and then only need to clean up the last Kappa Tengu after. Not gonna lie, dodging the Magarula was pretty lucky, as I am pretty sure that under Rage it would have one-shot Joker, and with the Rage spamming, this could have been quite the tricky battle otherwise. Again, we are at a point where we have to skip the majority of enemies, especially later on, since there is no way we can hit any weaknesses on them. The fact that quite a few of them also null gun means that there won't be any shock shenanigans either, so we just run away from the majority of them. The second mini-boss is a battle against 3 Makamis. Those are weak to electricity, so we throw stun guns to get 1 Morse, then try to beat them with physical attacks. Unfortunately, we can't beat any of them within a single turn, and the enemy's double fangs especially does huge damage that we can recover from, so that is not going to work out, and eventually I threw the fight and got myself wiped. I tried this strategy 2 more times, thinking that maybe I just need some better luck, but there is no way that this is going to get us through here. Luckily, there is another option we still have. Early on, we got 3 straw dolls, which have a medium chance to curse insta-kill an enemy, so we throw one of those on the first turn, and with only 2 enemies remaining, the entire battle already looks a lot more promising. With that, we can switch back to our stun gun plus physical strategy and heal up with Champions Cup if needed. Technically, we could have just used all straw dolls to quickly get through here, but I want to save some of them because insta-kill items are always useful to have. Anyways, with only 2 enemies left, the battle is relatively safe, and a few turns later we got all enemies down and are pretty much ready to head into the big boss battle. Before we do that though, we first make a visit to this palace's gatekeeper, which is Arahabaki, and this one is a huge pain in a setup like this. While the battle is technically optional, we definitely want to grab it now already, since Madarami's Will Seed accessory nulls all weaknesses of a persona, and with our stand being weak to ice and Madarami loving to cast Bufu, this accessory might be mandatory if we want to get through the second boss fight. But before that, we need to crack our Habaki first, and this is already a problem in itself, as you can see. Our Habaki nulls all physical and gun attacks, so the only way to get through here is by throwing freeze sprays and then bypass the immunity thanks to the frozen status. Unfortunately, our Habaki is not only pretty powerful, it also loves to spam brainwash attacks, which eat up your turns all the time. And to make matters even worse, it usually follows it up with Mobsio, which hits for technical damage, so yeah, this is a problem. Even though I was pretty sure that this was not winnable yet, I still tried a couple of times hoping for some better luck, but the outcome was pretty much always the same. It's either Dizzy or Brainwash, and the follow-up Psy attack that just wipes Joker immediately. Because of this, we finish off the dungeon, unlock the electric chair in the Velvet Room, which is completely useless for now, and then grind some more levels. In order to get through Madarame, we need some levels anyways, and I figured level 25 is probably the lowest we could possibly go. Obviously, we want to keep grinding at a minimum, considering with each additional level the grind until the next one becomes longer and longer, and I don't feel like spending 20 hours here fighting the same enemies over and over again. On level 25, we return to our Habaki to give it one more shot. We now use Champions Cup to start the battle with increased attack, and then again use freeze sprays to bypass the immunity with freeze. At level 25, Joker is also strong enough to tank a technical Mobsio, so with freeze and cleave, we can now slash our way through the enemy until we win the battle and get the last will seed. Like mentioned before, the accessory eliminates all weaknesses of the party member wearing it, so this might be very useful in the upcoming battle against Madarame. I was honestly not very confident about winning the battle even at level 25, but I still wanted to give it a shot, so we leave the palace, only to send the calling card on the following day and return. For the first attempt, we went with the arm PC accessory since I figured the +3 to all stats makes Joker more tanky and also slightly increases our damage output. The fact that Cleave doesn't even do half of a piece's HP even with the +3 though, makes me think that this is not going to end well. We occasionally get some pretty good dodging luck early on, but once Joker gets inflicted with the paint, the battle is pretty much lost. Joker is now weak to all attacks, and while we can technically barely survive, we have to constantly throw beats to keep up with the damage and are not able to get any attacks in any longer. There is also the mechanic to paint Madarame himself, but in a solo Joker setup this is not an option, so with that strategy we basically stand no chance at all. After a couple of more failed attempts, I made some adjustments and switched to the gauntlets, which increased the chance to dodge magic attacks. I figured that with some really good luck, we could maybe have a chance, but Madarame quickly made sure to let me know that this was not going to be the solution either. And while it certainly felt like we did dodge attacks more often compared to before, it was nowhere near enough to make any progress in the fights. The last option here is the Warden's Baton for an extra 40% increase in max HP. I figured that if we are tanky enough to take 2 turns of attacks, we can get more attacks on our end in, or at least heal up easier compared to before. Unfortunately, in the end, it didn't make much of a difference either. While our survivability is definitely better than it used to be before, we still barely get any chance to get any attacks in at all. We usually hang in the battle decently well until we get to the pain part, at which point the battle quickly goes south. With the constant need to heal Joker to keep him from getting wiped, we get no chances for any attacks, so yeah, this doesn't look like it's an option either. We are already having huge troubles and we're not even close to getting anywhere in phase 1, so it looks like we're going to have to grind quite a bit longer. Since level 25 was not gonna cut it, I was hoping that we're having better chances at level 30. During Arsene's level ups, we also save scummed again to get as much attack and endurance on him as possible, to not only make Joker tankier, but also to guarantee a 2-shot on the portrait parts, no matter which accessory we equip. Unfortunately, the result at level 30 was not that much different. While we did become slightly tankier and even managed to wipe the eye with the help of the arms PC accessory, once Joker got painted, it was still the same as before. We are usually able to tank the majority of attacks, but we never got to the point where we could potentially put out damage from our end, while Madarame just whacks away at Joker each and every turn. I honestly don't know how long we grinded for level 30 already, but it looks like this won't be enough either. And it was at this point that I said, you know what, screw it. Might as well level all the way to 37 and get Belphegor. And needless to say, this grind took forever, and I'm not even going to lie, I put the difficulty on easy during this. Not because the enemies are too strong, but because easy difficulty gives 20% more experience, so this is all about reducing the amount of time needed to grind. Even with easy difficulty on though, this takes forever, but luckily this is an edited version, so we can just jump right to the point where Joker reaches level 37. We put the difficulty back to hard and officially unlock the first Tau persona. And here is where we also add a new rule, where we are allowed to fuse the first persona of an Arcana if we're not able to recruit it at this point of the game yet. This is something I thought about doing in general, since certain Arcanas have starting personas that simply never appear as a random encounter, so going forward with each run, we are allowed to fuse the very first persona of an Arcana if we don't have the possibility to recruit it by the time we reach the level requirements. Luckily, Belphegor can easily be fused with Arsene and the Huapo, so let's look into the first Tower Arcana of the run. Belphegor resists ice, electricity and nuke, and repels curse while only being weak to fire, so it's already pretty strong when it comes to elemental affinities. The biggest thing though is that it starts out with both Ice Break and Mabufula, two skills which are going to be incredibly useful in our current situation. And to top it off, Belphegor also gets Buffodyne and Concentrate, so we're getting access to a tier 3 spell rather early now. In fact, Thoth is the only persona who gets access to Concentrate earlier at level 40, so this is pretty huge and will help us a ton going forward. Obviously, we're not allowed to use any of the carried over skills, but once Belphegor is finished, we are ready to get our revenge on Madarame. This was probably one of the worst grinds I have ever done, but I expect that the next couple of segments should become a breeze now that we are also severely overleveled, but let's see for ourselves. We open up the battle using Ice Break to nullify everybody's resistance. Both eyes absorb magic attacks, so in order to get the most out of Mabufula, we go for Ice Break first. And needless to say, this was exactly the shot in the arm that we needed. It is literally only 2 Mabufulas and all portrait parts are done, and we transition into phase 2 for the first time. Madarame will now summon 4 fakes, and just like in phase 1, we will use Ice Break to nullify everybody's resistance. With the fire fake being weak to ice, we can also get a 1 more to make sure we get some good damage on the boss itself as well. With Belphegor also resisting both ice and wind, we're not taking a lot of damage in this phase and can easily heal up if needed. Another thing I never knew is that after seemingly defeating a couple of fakes, new ones summoned by Madarame will occasionally spawn asleep and seemingly also never wake up. This obviously makes incoming damage much more manageable, so at this point I just decided to stop spamming Mabufula and just attack Madarame with regular physical attacks, since Belphegor literally can't do anything else but Ice Break and Mabufula at the moment. With 2 fakes asleep though, this is not an issue, so we whittle Madarame down until he's out and we are finally able to complete dungeon number 2. Luckily, Belphegor was the perfect counter to Madarame, but I can already see this dungeon becoming a huge roadblock for a lot of solo Joker Arcanas. This boss fight alone is probably going to make or break several Arcanas, and obviously this also has quite the influence on the final ranking as well. With that being said, we now got some downtime again. In terms of spending our days, there isn't much difference to before though. If Maruki is available during the day, we will spend time with him, otherwise we just try to get some social stats up, and during evening times we either work out or craft infiltration tools. During the school trip, we automatically unlock Kasumi's confidant, and shortly after we get access to Kichioji. Again, we sell off all the clothes we don't need in order to gain both money and points. The points are going to be very important as we can buy debuff items and later on ultimate sprays, which act like the debilitate spell. Darts isn't really important this time around as this is a solo Joker run, but we still want to get our technical rank up as soon as possible. Although we can't exploit it as hard as we could with additional party members, technical hits are still very powerful and are going to make dungeon progression quite a bit easier. We also get our first hangout event with the Twin Wardens, where we get a Mabufo and a Maragi skill card right after. I was actually looking that up during the Madarame segment, as those skills could have helped us big time against the boss, but it turns out that they first unlock literally the day after Madarame's deadline, so yeah, thanks for nothing game. On the following day, we also get the Fry and Psy cards, which we will slap onto Belphegor to give it some more elemental variety. Up until now, grinding enemies was rather painful due to us only being able to hit 1 or 2 weaknesses, but with better variety, this should become much less of an issue. During daytime, we also start visiting the temple if there is nothing better to do. Since workouts in Joker's room only raise our max HP, we will use the temple to also get our max SP up quite a bit. I assume we will max out both eventually, but I'd rather start early to have a safety net for the next couple of dungeons. We max out our technical rank, and shortly afterwards we're pretty much ready to head into the next palace. With our ridiculously high level and a strong Belphegor in hands, we pretty much burst through the first 2 waves of Onis with Mabufula before Makoto awakens to her persona. And this encounter isn't much different. Although Suiki absorbs ice, we just use Mabufula to take out the 2 Onis and then focus on the mini-boss itself. Suiki is weak to nuke magic, and with Fry and Belphegor, we can take it out in 3 hits without any problems. After all this time, it feels so nice to breeze through certain portions of the game. The grind was incredibly annoying, but at least it looks like we can now take a breather and relax through the next couple of segments. On the following day, we return to the palace and continue where we left off the day before. And now I finally get to say something that I wanted to do the entire video, but couldn't until now. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Actually, that's not what I wanted to say, but please sub anyways. The thing I actually wanted to say is, for the first time in this run, random encounters are not a huge issue anymore. We got good coverage on Belphegor and can take out the majority of encounters within a single turn. Another thing you might notice is that we also got a second party member in our setup for now. This has to do with treasure demons. Early in the dungeon, I realized that we can never grab treasure demons in a solo Joker setup since he can't issue a holdup by himself, so going forward we will take a second party member into the team and have them there until we get the new treasure demon. The party member in question is obviously not allowed to do anything other than guard, and will also be switched out the moment we get the newest treasure demon. The party members in question will also get swapped out for mini-boss fights, like the first scripted encounter against the Aura boss. This one is quickly taken care of with a Mabufula, since they're weak to ice, so nothing big to mention here. The next mini-boss encounter is against Suiki, Fuki and Kinki. Unfortunately, we weren't able to get a shock up with our stun gun, but that doesn't matter for the most part. Suiki still absorbs ice, so we tried to take it out first using Fry, and once it's down, we're going back to Mabufula for the remaining two enemies. If we manage to get a freeze proc, we can use it to deal extra technical damage with physical attacks, and then continue on until both enemies are down. This was rather anticlimactic, but what do you expect when you're 10 levels higher than the enemies? Speaking of breezing through, up next is Campanda, who we shock using our technical gun and then quickly take out with Fry. The last bigger battle left is against the Willseed Gatekeeper Cerberus, who is weak against ice attacks, so you already know what that means. Throw out Mabufulas until we win. Easy fights. Unlike other challenge runs, the Willseed accessory from here with the AoE defense buff is not going to matter a lot, but for completionist sakes I still wanted to grab it while we're already here. And yeah, that is pretty much everything there is to Palace number 3. Like mentioned before, this was rather unspectacular, but it's basically what I expected coming in here. Before leaving, we unlocked the Fusion Alarm, which we will use in our Belphegor in order to get a Bufodine skill card early. Having access to a tier 3 spell at this point certainly helps, and after leaving the palace, we head back into Mementos to clear up the requests we have gotten in the meantime. Once again, the main reason for our visit is to upgrade the Willseed accessories. Madarame's Willseed nullifies all weaknesses, which could be useful for the next boss battle, so we want to make sure to have it fully powered going in. Once we're done, we send the calling card, equip the Ring of Vanity, and then head back into the palace for the next big boss fight against Kaneshiro. The boss starts off with Missile Party, which pretty much is the reason why we equip the accessory, since it's a fire attack, and then goes for Ocular Vulcan, both of which don't do a lot of damage. After guarding the first march of the Piggy, I was thinking that Kaneshiro would now go over to his last Piggytron phase, but since we don't have the opportunity to throw any items his way in a solo segment, he will just continue to go for March of the Piggy permanently now, and this is actually a slight problem. While the attack when guarded doesn't do huge damage, we still need to heal regularly, and with the guarding of the attack itself, we're having troubles getting damage in on the boss. We can only attack about once every third cycle, so progressing this fight is a huge pain. I went on like this for a while before I just restarted the game to adjust our strategy. If Kaneshiro only uses his fire attack once, there really isn't a need to equip Madarame's accessory. Instead, we now equip the Warden's Baton, which increases Choka's max HP by 40%. If we can get his HP up to the point where we only need to heal every other cycle, this would already be good enough to safely get through phase 1. And that is pretty much what ended up happening. Not only do the higher max HP give us quite some more leeway, but thanks to the higher HP, Lifestones also heal for a lot more, making it much easier to get attacks on Kaneshiro in between. While this still takes quite a while, the strategy is pretty safe as Kaneshiro only uses the same pattern over and over again, so it's only a matter of time until we take Piggytron out, and then transition into phase 2 of the fight where we now have to incapacitate the Guardians. Another reason why we went into Mementos earlier was to get large sleep vials from Josei, since those can put all 3 enemies to sleep, making it pretty easy to get damage onto the boss itself. Kanashiro will also try to put Joker to sleep with Lullaby, but with the amount of HP we got, there really isn't much we need to worry about, even less so since it usually likes to miss anyways. We just continue on like this until Kanashiro starts using Make It Rain, at which point the guards will run away and the battle is won. One more Confidant is all we need, and Palace number 3 is successfully completed. Being severely overleveled still certainly helped a lot here, but I'm not sure for how much longer we will be able to just rush through the game like this. Anyways, we got a bit of downtime again until the story progresses. Since we unlocked the church now, we can go there on Sundays to stack up Wine of Graces for full heals. Beads and bead chains are rather rare, so we definitely want to get the church items every week. Other than that, the majority of downtime is just like before. During the day, we hang out with Maruki or pray at the temple, while evenings are usually reserved for more workouts or crafting infiltration tools. And that's basically all that is happening until we get to Futaba and then head into the pyramid shortly afterwards. This is usually where I'd say that the upcoming boss is by far the easiest in the entire game, but after already struggling quite a bit in the chariot run, I'd rather keep my mouth shut for now and see how this will all play out. The first mini-boss is a fight against Garuda. The plan was to shock the enemy and work with technical hits, but since we didn't get lucky on our stun gun, we just start throwing out Confidants, which do quite some damage as well. A couple of hits later, the enemy is already down and we continue on. Random encounters for the most part are still easily taken care of thanks to Belphegor, which already makes things quite a bit more comfortable. With that, we skip forward to the next mini-boss mod, and this one is a bit of a pain in the solo setup. We don't have any effective way to hit a weakness here, so we throw out a Confidant and hope for a lucky freeze. Unfortunately, Joker gets turned into a mouse, and as you can see, he takes quite a bit of damage in this form and is unable to act. Mod will occasionally summon Lamias, which is nice since we can get a 1 more thanks to their ice weakness and deal additional damage. If Mod decides to throw out a Megiddo during mouse phase though, we got a problem, and this is what got us another game over. On the following attempt, we did get quite a bit luckier with freezes though, and we were able to take the enemy down without any further issues. During dungeon progression, we also hit level 41 on Joker, which means we can now also fuse the newest addition to our team, Red Rider. Red Rider is a mix of ailment-based physical attacks and Psy damage. Looking at its affinities though, Belphegor seems to be the better option overall, as Red Rider only nulls Curse while being weak to Bless. I guess depending on which elemental incoming damage we have to expect, we will switch around between the two of them, but Belphegor looks like it's the better option overall. The big thing with Red Rider here is that we can carry over the Relentless passive, which increases weakness hits by 50% thanks to the Treasure Demon, so overall, Red Rider will probably be able to deal more damage on weakness hits. Since the next 2 upcoming personas are both DLC, it'll be quite a while before we get access to the next one, so those are what we're going to work with for now. Once we're done fusing everything, we return to head into the second mod battle. This one becomes a little easier thanks to the ads that we can bounce weakness hits off. The fact that we now also have access to a decent Garula spell certainly helps things, and it's only a couple of turns before the battle is already over again and Mod is down. The last bigger battle in this dungeon is against the Woolseed Gatekeeper Alilat. This one is weak to fire, and we can also inflict burn on it for some nice extra passive damage. With all those combined, it's just 3 turns again until the enemy is down, and we retrieve the last Woolseed. Before leaving the palace, we stop by the Velvet Room and unlock the Gallows function, and this may be the most important feature, as we can now sacrifice our treasure demons to easily level up our personas. Because of this, we also stay in the palace a bit longer to trigger further fusion alarms, to get Belphegor up to level 42 in order for it to learn Concentrate, as I am pretty sure that we're going to need it very badly for the upcoming boss battle. Once that is done, we leave the palace and return to the real world. We sacrifice another treasure demon in order to inherit Taronda onto Belphegor for an attack debuff, and then pay the laundromat another visit to get some new armor we acquired in the pyramid. During the evening, we also go visit the fishing pond to fish for a couple of rounds. The main reason for that is to buy weakener sprays, which serve as AoE attack debuff. Those would have been desperately needed for the Yell buff fight in the Chariot run, so we make sure to stack up on them to have more than enough for later on. I am not quite sure whether or not we can effectively use those in a solo choker setup, but I'd rather have them and not use them than the other way around. Once all of that is done, we give the calling card to Futaba and are back into the palace on the following day for major boss fight number 4. After struggling big time here during my Chariot run, I was most certainly not going to take this one easy. Before going in, we equip the Dandy Mirror we got from Sojiro as exam reward. This one comes with Counter Strike, which will reflect back all physical attacks with a 15% chance. In a solo setup, we're not going to be able to shoot Wakaba down, which means we can only attack her with ranged attacks, and considering we don't have access to a single gun attack, the occasional reflected damage is going to help out quite a bit when it comes to damaging the boss. This is also the reason why we wanted to get Concentrate on Belphegor. While Wakaba takes 5 times damage from physical attacks, she's neutral to magic, so Concentrate is going to be needed to deal somewhat decent damage to her. And overall, our setup looks to be rather solid at first. The most annoying part is definitely the Wing Blast attack, since it has a high chance to put Dizzy on Joker, which is a problem since the slam afterwards inflicts technical damage and also has a chance to knock Joker down. As for healing, Life Stones work pretty well since they're percentage based, and while Counter Strike only triggers 15% of the time, it does good damage when it reflects back at the enemy. With this setup, the battle is pretty safe and it's only a matter of time before we should get Wakaba down. For the most part, we don't even need to attack, but just make sure that Joker stays alive and hope for the occasional physical Counter Strike. And I was pretty sure that this strategy would give us the victory, but unfortunately there is a little something I completely forgot about. There are several major bosses in the game which track the amount of turns that have passed, and if that number goes past a specific point, well, it's game over, because at that point the boss will start to spam an overpowered version of Megidolaun, which pretty much one-shots the entire party, and this is exactly what happened here. With Wakaba still having like 25% of her health left, it looks like we exceeded the allowed turns, and there we go. So this basically means that we can't rely on good repel RNG alone, but have to play way more aggressively and try to get additional damage with concentrated Bufodines in. So this is basically our strategy from attempt 2 going forward. Early in the fight, we throw a cleaning spray to decrease Wakaba's defense, and empty our gun first to deal maximum damage. From this point on, we have to hope to be able to get concentrated Bufodines in. The Bufodines do a bit over 500 damage, with the counter strikes usually dealing around 750 damage and Wakaba having a total of 18,000 HP. This might take quite a while, and I'm honestly not sure if this is doable within the turn limit without really good counter luck. We did come really close on attempt number 2, but with probably one attack left to go, we once again get Megidolaun out of our boots and have to restart the entire battle. At this point, there isn't really a whole lot that we can do to change things in our favor. The one thing we can still try to improve is to play even more aggressive. Usually, we would throw life stones once we get below half HP, but if we try to optimize our HP management as well as somewhat possible, and then throw a beat once Joker gets really low, we might be able to squeeze out a couple of more attacks throughout the fight. Overall, this is still going to depend on counter luck, since the counter strikes do quite a bit more damage than our concentrated Bufodines and are generally the biggest source of damage in this boss fight. We did come very close to victory a couple of times, but in the end it was never quite enough and we go down to Megidolaun several more times. Since there really isn't much else that we can do here for the most part, our only choice is to restart over and over again and hope to get the necessary luck needed to beat Wakaba. Eventually, we had an attempt that started off really bad and never really got going until we got 4 consecutive counters, at which point I was starting to hope again. Towards the end, Wakaba was almost down, at which point I decided to skip the concentrate and just go all out on damage with Bufodine, hoping to squeeze in enough damage within the last turns. We throw out one more Bufodine and it looks like we made it just in time and are able to finally beat Wakaba. I gotta admit, walk-up in those Arcana challenges certainly proves to be a big roadblock every single time. And because I was curious, I went back afterwards to check out the video and recount the turns needed, and it looks like walk-up had taken 98 actions so far, meaning that if Confidant would not have ended the battle right there, we would have gotten wiped on the falling turn yet again. Talk about a close call, but that doesn't matter since we got through the battle, which is the only important aspect, and we can continue on with the run. With that, we have quite some downtime again until Futaba recovers. And unsurprisingly, our free time activities stay the same for the most part. During the day, we like to pray at the temple to raise our max SP even further, and during evenings, we work out or craft infiltration tools. We also go back to work a couple of times to unlock the extra mementos requested triggered during the summer break, but other than that, it's the same as before. During evenings, we also start to occasionally play video games since the accessory rewards for completing them might come in handy at some point as well. After some time, Futaba recovers, we go to the beach and automatically unlock her rank 1 as well. On September the 4th, we get the Winners Don't Use Sheets request, and this one is really important since it is the one that unlocks the Tower Confidant of Shinya. Because of this, we immediately head into Mementos to clear up all requests and also engage with the cheating Ose. Since there isn't anything particularly interesting happening otherwise, we skip to the end where we return to the real world to finally unlock Shinya's Confidant on the following day. With that, let's quickly take a look at Shinya's Confidant abilities. Funnily enough, Bullet Hail might just be the most useful passive ability, as it lets us occasionally reduce the HP of random encounters by half before the battle even starts, which makes dungeon progression quite a bit smoother. Laced Bullets and Oda Special are only partially useful if you're not able to customize guns and the airsoft chop, but the increased chance of inflicting shock and the piercing ability may still come in handy every once in a while. Overall, not the most impressive Confidant, but definitely more useful than some of the others. Up next, we go through the Hawaii trip where we once again hang out with the boys because no waifu, and once we return to Japan, we are ready to head into the next dungeon. The first battle in here is Haru's awakening battle against her fiancé and 2 robots. The robots are weak to fire, while the fiancé is weak to Psy magic, so we use both of those to our advantage to get some damage in. Unfortunately, the robots barely survive, which leads to them casting Recondra to fully heal everybody else, so ideally we want to take out the robots before that happens again. Once the ads are down, we can focus on the main boss, and a couple of attacks later, he's already down and out. Up next are the battles against the robot chiefs. Thanks to Red Rider inheriting all kinds of elemental skills from the treasure demons, we have pretty good coverage, so those shouldn't be such a big issue. The first one is weak to electricity, and with the ads being weak to fire, we can easily hit all weaknesses and get rid of the enemies. Chief number 2 is weak to wind, so it's the same as before, just with Garula instead of Sionga. The last robot chief is weak to Psy, so once we have taken the ads out again, it's not long before he follows them and we are already done with the first segment of the dungeon. While those battles weren't really any problem, I am slightly afraid of the boss fight later on, especially considering that we only have a single target version of the majority of spells, but more on that when we get there. By the way, this is also the point where we can first encounter Belphegor naturally, so had we not fused it earlier, we would have had to stick with Arsene up until now, so I think it's easy to see why I added the rule which allows the fusion of the very first persona of an Arcana. With that being said, we're up against the next mini-boss of the dungeon, which is the robot army, and this one's basically free. All we need to do is spam Mobseo through all waves and hope we don't miss any enemies, and we're already done again. The Will Seed Gatekeeper in this dungeon is Melchizedek, and unlike other challenges, this one proves to be quite the problem. The plan is to stun the enemy and then hit technical damage, but the enemy likes to use God's Hand, which does huge damage. Not only that, but the Makugan hits Red Rider's weakness, and we game over here. Because of this, we switch back to Belphegor for the next attempt and use Fry to hit technical damage. Belphegor is not weak to blast damage, and Fry, unlike physical attacks, cannot be countered, so overall this is probably the better option. We get a little bit trolled with an unlucky hit into a Makarakarn, but other than that, the battle is much safer with Belphegor, and we're able to take the enemy down shortly afterwards and retrieve the last will seed. And that's about it for this dungeon. The only thing left to do is send the calling card once we're done. Before we do that though, we go back and grind some more on Gira Mekala for some extra experience and also for some more fusion alarms. We want to get Red Rider's magic up as high as somewhat possible to guarantee that we're going to be able to take down the robot waves in 2 turns. Like mentioned earlier, we are lacking AoE options for the majority of elements, which means that we can only attack all enemies once per turn, so ideally, we need to do more than half of their HP with one attack. Before we send the calling card, we also head back into Mementos to complete the still open request against the cheating gamer. The reward for this one is a null physical skill card, which is huge and will help us immensely throughout the rest of the run. Once we're done there, we return to the real world, hang out some more with Shinya and wash our dirty clothes at the laundromat before sending the calling card. With Joker at level 51 and Red Rider powered up as well, we should hopefully be able to deal enough damage to get through this. We also equipped the Ring of Lust on Joker for the Tarokasha effect of Champions Cup. The heal itself is not going to be that important, but I am pretty sure that we're going to need at least an attack buff in order to get the later waves down in 2 turns. Now on to the boss fight itself. Wave 1 is weak to fire and we can one-shot them with Agilao, so this one is still safe. For wave 2 we already set up the attack buff, and since the robots only use Assault Dive, we're not taking any damage here thanks to the null physical skill card we put on Red Rider. Once the buff is up, we can take out the entire wave easily with Mopsio, which triggers wave 3, which is weak to electricity. Luckily Sionga still does more than half with an attack buff up, so we have no issues taking the enemies out on the second turn. Wave 4 is weak to wind, and here is where it gets interesting because unlike before, our attacks now are not strong enough to 2-shot the enemies, so they explode and the wave respawns. Now, the logical solution to this would be to throw an extra cleaning spray for an AoE defense buff in order to increase our damage even further. Unfortunately, this isn't really an option either, since Okamura usually buffs one of the 4 robots with Rakukasha, so the extra hit we get after knocking everybody down is usually needed to get additional damage onto the buffed one, since we would be nowhere near strong enough to get it down otherwise. Since we don't have any access to Magarula for AoE damage, Concentrate is also not an option since we would only be able to hit the first target with the buffed attack. After they exploded for like the 6th time or so, I realized that this was not going to work out and that we need some more magic on Red Rider. The last wave would be weak to Psy, and with a concentrated Mopsio, we should be good to go, so the only roadblock as it seems is the Wind Weak wave. Since we got relatively close to beating them, I assume that 4 or 5 more points in magic should be enough to push us over the edge and do more than half of their HP with Garula. Because of this, we reload the save from Mementos from earlier to grind some more experience and try to trigger a couple of more fusion alarms. During the fusion alarms, we also save scum again to make sure we gain additional points to magic, and once Red Rider hits a magic stat of 55, we return back to the palace and give the boss another try. Wave 1 to 3, just like before, pose very little problems and are easily taken care of with Red Rider. Once wave 4 spawns, the moment of truth is upon us. We need to do more than half to have a chance, and we seem to roughly do 50% damage, so this is looking much more promising now, especially after throwing a cleaning spray for an extra AoE defense debuff. On the second turn, we are able to get rid of all enemies, and with that we transition into wave 5. And while you would think that this one is even harder, we have the advantage of being able to work with Concentrate here. Since we have access to Mopsio, we can go for an AoE attack, so we're able to hit all enemies with the buffed weakness hit. We let the first wave run away on purpose so we can set up everything we need and then throw out big damage. The enemy that was buffed with Rakukasha managed to survive, and just as I thought that we got this one in the bag, Okamura throws out a Dekasha and wipes our attack buff, so once again we are barely not able to get rid of the last enemy, and the wave respawns. Since I wasn't sure if this was just bad luck or not, I went for the very same strategy again, but just like before, Okamura Dekasha's Joker, and therefore again we lack the necessary damage to continue. So while I was pretty sure that we can get through that phase without bigger issues at first, it seems that we're stuck once again. The Dekaja is definitely the big deal breaker here by the looks of it, there is no way to avoid it. On the third try we only went for a single Mopsio and then decided to concentrate again. While Dekaja sucks, the higher multiplier on concentrate could definitely help us in maybe dealing just a bit more damage overall, and it seems like this worked out perfectly as we were able to wipe all enemies and transition into the final robot phase. And with that, the battle is pretty much won. Big Boy Robo is susceptible to all kinds of ailments, so we throw freeze sprays and then go for Rising Slash for easy technical damage. Considering we're almost at max HP as well, we should be easily able to take a Big Bang challenge, so there isn't much we need to worry about here. We continue on doing damage until the enemy is down, and afterwards we just need to tank Robotaro's explosion, and a single hit to Okamura is enough to win the battle and complete the next palace successfully. And I gotta admit, this was probably one of the bosses I was most afraid of. I expect that this could very well be the ending points for other Arcanas, so I'm really glad we get to continue on here. With that, we have once again some downtime before things continue on. We build up our confidant with Shinya, and also continue our confidant with Maruki now that Haru has joined the party. We read the Knowing Your Heart book to extend our technical conditions, and pray at the temple when none of the confidants are available. During evening time, we usually are busy playing video games. By completing them, you can return them to the shop in Akihabara and get accessories as rewards, with some of those being quite useful like Wind or Isem for example. We also get the first glimpse of the final palace as Kasumi awakens to a persona and the enemy is easily taken care of with a couple of Kuga spells. Once we unlock the request for Shinya's confidant, we head back into Mementos. Unfortunately, Shinya's mom seems to be in the next area, which doesn't unlock until after Okamura's deadline, so there really isn't anything we can do to advance him any further at the moment. Speaking of deadlines, Haru's dad dies and we get the last rank on Maruki's confidant to make sure we're not forgetting until the last day like we did in the Chariot run. At the school festival, Akechi once again blackmails the party into joining them, so we're off into Sai's palace next. The first Ose fight is a bit annoying since it literally resists everything, but luckily we have Psybreak, so we don't need to worry about that and can easily get it down. We grab the newest treasure demon and buff our personas in the Velvet Room during fusion alarms as often as we get the chance to. The newest treasure demon has access to all AoE tier 2 spells, which would have been incredibly useful for Okamura, but I guess there is a reason they didn't put it in until after. Random encounters also really are no big issue. Even a strong Shadow Skadi can easily be taken care of with the combination of Burn and Garula. The first real mini-boss of the dungeon is against Neburos, and with the lucky bullet hail, we are already halfway through, so a few more Kugas are already enough to win the battle. Yadayu is quickly taken care of with Shock, and just a bit later, we are already up against the last mini-boss of the palace's first half with Norn. And Norn can be pretty annoying in a single character setup where you don't have a lot of decent physical moves. Ideally we want to get a crit here since we can one-shot it, and if Norn starts to get low on HP, it will just use the Arahan to fully heal itself and you can start all over again. And while this is annoying, we can just throw out a regular attack and then concentrate and wipe the enemy with the buffed attack. Since that is it for part 1 of the palace, we return to the real world, give Sai a quick visit, and then return for part 2. We start off with the Willseed Gatekeeper Bale, and after burning it, I went for the wind technical damage only to forget that Bale absorbs wind, so good job. Because of this, we go for classic shock shenanigans. Magarudine hits like a truck, but luckily it's just a few more hits until the enemy is down, and we retrieve the last will seed. Up next is the battle against Raja Naga. Unlike Bale, it is not draining wind attacks, so we burn it and then go for big technical wind damage. 2 cycles of those are enough, and we're already done again. Before we head into the last mandatory battle of this palace though, we return to the Velvet Room since Shoka reached level 59 in the meantime, which means it's now time for our newest tower persona, Black Rider. Black Rider already comes with Maegon, which is pretty big, and also has decent elemental affinities as well, being only weak to fire. By far the biggest thing though is its electric chair item, as sacrificing it during a fusion alarm grants us a Make It Loud skill card, and this is huge. Having access to the strongest non-persona specific almighty attack might just save our butts in certain situations, so this is definitely a very welcome addition. Since we used our newest treasure demon to fuse it, we can also carry over a lot of elemental tier 2 AoE spells, so Black Rider most likely is also going to be our choice against Shadow Sai later on. That being said, we still need to complete the palace first, with the last mandatory battle being the solo Joker Gauntlet, and as always this one is laughable. With null physical, 2 of the 3 battles can't even damage Joker, and the triple ranked encounter is literally one shot with a Mazionga, so no problem. We sacrifice our Black Rider to grab a Make It Loud skill card, and with that, we are now done and have some downtime until the final showdown with Sai arrives. The next day, we're back into Mementos in order to beat Shinya's mom so we can max his confidant out. Shinya's mom, aka Atakini, is weak to fire, so we just spam Maragion. Unfortunately, she has access to one-shot kill, which does quite some damage, but luckily for us, she doesn't use it all too often. All her other attacks are all physical, which we know. The occasional counter does some nice damage as well, and we have very little issues taking her out. As a reward, we get a Soma, and we can now max out Shinya for good and unlock the Tao's ultimate persona Mada. We continue praying at the temple during the day, and doing random things during evenings since there really isn't a lot left to do anymore. We max out Maruki for good, and once the final day is upon us, we head back into the palace to fight Shadow Sai. Now, as most of you know, phase 1 of the Sai battle automatically ends when you catch her cheating. In a single player setup though, this is not possible since there is no one available to break the glass, so we are basically stuck in an infinite cycle, right? Well, not exactly. While the roulette keeps repeating over and over again, after 10 times you get some nice exclusive dialogue where Futaba provokes Sai into transitioning, and we now enter phase 2. With both Black Rider and Belphegor being weak to fire, I was expecting the first roulette to land exactly there, which sucks on the one hand because of the weakness, but with Black Rider nulling physical, the follow-up attack can't damage Joker at least. A charged Mabufula does over 1000 damage, so we're doing good when it comes to attacking. When she re-rolls the roulette, I made sure to have Red Rider equipped since with his Blast weakness, the chance for her to roll Blast is basically guaranteed. Now, why is this important? Well, you might remember that Black Rider not only resists Blast, but also has access to Maiga on, so we can once again deal huge damage with concentrated attacks. Only 2 turns later, we are already landing on Almighty, so Sai is now neutral to everything again. Since most of her attacks in this phase are physical, we don't need to worry about too much. A reflected Severing Slash does 1500 damage to her, and Maiga still hits for big numbers as well. And just as it was looking like we're going to get the victory, Sai throws out another Berserker Dance which hits Joker for 950 damage. Good thing we were on max HP here, or otherwise this would have been another game over. On the following turn, we throw out another Maiga to beat Sai and complete the next palace successfully. And while this battle almost got me at the end, this was still quite a bit easier compared to Wakabara or Okumura before, so I'm glad we got one last easy battle before the struggle continues on. After going through a crap ton of cutscenes, we end up in Shido's palace, so it's basically right back to action. As most of you know, we got 5 mini-bosses and the Akechi battle coming up, and in a solo setup, this could become pretty interesting, so let's jump right into it. Mini-boss number 1 is Yamato no Orochi, and this battle is literally free. The only thing the boss does is concentrate and then follow up with ice magic, and with Black Rider draining ice, there is literally no way the boss can hurt us. As for damage, we once again go for the burn proc and then hit technical damage with nuke attacks until the enemy is down and out. We continue on with mini-boss number 2 for Neos. Since Forneos loves to spam brainwash attacks, we equip the Lamb's Pillow which decreases ailment infliction chances, and then head into the battle. Forneos is weak to electricity, but we still try to burn it for technical hits once again. The accessory does very good work trying to prevent the brain rush from happening, and it's just a couple of turns until the enemy is already down and out again. Mini-boss number 3 is Hanuman, who is accompanied by 2 Garudas. While the Garudas are weak to electricity, Hanuman is weak to ice, but unfortunately with the evade ice passive, getting a hit in can be tricky at times. The Garuda's Meteorama can be annoying as well, but luckily we're easily out damaging their heals. Once the ads are gone, the battle is practically won as Hanuman only uses physical attacks, so it's just a matter of a couple of more turns before he goes down as well. I even put the battle on auto at this point because it just really didn't matter at all. Before we continue on with mini-boss number 4, we make a quick detour to battle the Willseed Gatekeeper, which is a Kali accompanied by 2 Dakinis. With all enemies once again exclusively using physical attacks, we are pretty much invincible. We throw out a couple of Mabufulas hoping for a lucky freeze, but otherwise it's just attacking until all 3 enemies are down. With that, we return to dungeon progression as we battle Oberon, who is accompanied by 2 Titanias, and this is one fight I was slightly afraid of. The enemies like to work with Dizzy, and with Titania using nuke magic, we have to watch out for technical hits. Oberon itself is weak to nuke as well, while the Titanias are weak to Psy. We also try to get a lucky shock proc, and while this doesn't work as intended, Frydyne does more than enough damage to easily wipe Oberon, so once we cleaned up the remaining Titania, we are already done again and only have one more letter of recommendation remaining. This one is against Angioki, and if you know its attack pattern, this fight is pretty safe as well. The mini-boss will always open up with Maiga on, so we equip Belphegor for the repel first. Afterwards, it will use a couple of physical attacks which we null, and then start repeating the cycle. Knowing this, we can get through pretty much the entire battle without ever taking damage. On Belphegor turns, we also use Concentrate and then throw out an Argidine for big damage. The battle takes quite a while due to its high HP, but we're never in any trouble and can finish off the boss soon after. With that, we head into the final encounter of the dungeon exploration part against Akechi. Phase 1 is against the Berserk Shadows, but this one is free since they only do physical attacks which we null, so we can quickly get through this part. Phase 1 Akechi is very similar to his rank 8 battle in Mementos, so knowing that pattern we can prepare accordingly and practically take no damage. The Megidolaon at the end barely hurts, and we can finish him off as well soon after. With that, we hit second form Akechi, and this one is a little trickier. Early in the battle, he pretty much exclusively attacks with physical damage, so we're still safe at this point. The much more annoying part is that he likes to set up Tetrakarn, and later also Makara Karn, so we have to break those before we're able to deal damage. Once he switches into the next phase is when the battle gets really interesting. He will now put up a Makara Karn if none is active, and then attack with curse damage, which we could repel with Belphegor. If a Makara Karn is up, he will always go for Moragion first, and then follow up with Maiga. Even though Belphegor is weak to fire, we still want to have it up because Maiga gets reflected, and I'd rather only have to deal with one attack per turn, even if that one is a weakness hit. What I didn't know, however, is that Akechi uses Desperation on himself after hitting a weakness, so now we have to watch out for the increased damage as well. When we enter the last phase, he starts clearing a Joker to prepare his Levantine attack, and here I got a little overconfident. With full HP, I was sure that I could easily tank the hit, and since he was almost down already, I went for the attack. But unfortunately Akechi survived, and with him having increased attack thanks to Desperation, he managed to hit Joker for almost 1400 HP and wipe him from full HP. That was certainly unexpected. But now that we know what awaits us, we can act accordingly on the second attempt. Again we get Akechi down to very low HP, this time we guard the incoming attack, and just a few hits later he goes down for good, and we're done with the dungeon exploration part of Shido's palace. Before sending the calling card, we want to make some preparations first though. We try to inherit Null Physical onto Belphegor since it's the only persona in our stock that is not immune yet, and this took what feels like forever. We got such bad luck that I was actually starting to look up online if passive skills can even be inherited, even though I was 100% sure that it was possible. Eventually, we got the necessary luck though, and with that we are ready to send the calling card and head into the next big boss battle of the run. Again, the game forces your party members into your setup to start this fight off, but since they still got starting equipment and are also quite a bit underleveled, they go down quickly. Phase 1 of the Shido battle starts with him repelling all physical and gun attacks, but since our focus is mostly on magic anyways, this is not a big issue. We concentrate with Belphegor and then throw out big Bufodines until he transforms. In his second form, he now resists all magic but is neutral to physical and gun attacks. Luckily though, we got Icebreak on Belphegor, so we can just cast that to negate his resistance and then continue on just like before. In his last phase, he uses Cannon Fire twice before charging up for his big Pyramid Blast attack. With a guard though, this can easily be negated, and while the following Cannon Fire still hits like a truck, we can heal up and continue doing damage until he is down. Up next, we have to go through second form Shido, who always opens up the battle with Heat Riser. Luckily, we got quite a few baptismal waters from the church to negate that. We don't have to worry about the Freer from Bloodbath thanks to our physical immunity, and the majority of his magical attacks are not too bad either. Just like before, we first use Concentrate and then deal big damage with Bufodine. The strategy works out pretty well, and after Reflected Tyrant's Fist, it's only a matter of time before Shido transitions again into his final form. Like in the previous phase, he opens up with Heat Riser and will regularly spam that, so our stock of baptismal waters comes in very handy. Shido usually switches between physical and elemental attacks. While the physical attacks are no problem and sometimes are even reflected, we need to watch out which elemental attack he is using next. He goes by a very strict pattern, so this way we can try to prevent the worst when it comes to incoming damage. As for outgoing damage, it's once again Concentrate and Bufodine. We don't take a single bit of damage from his 3 attack combo as we block the first one, have a Homunculus for the second one, and straight up dodge the final one. Another Bufodine later, we are already into the last phase where he now alternates between Megidolaon and Tyrant's Judgment with a Heat Rise and a Debilitate mixed in every now and then. 2 Bufodines later, Shido is finally down for good, and we complete the palace on our very first attempt. Not going to lie, this went way smoother than I anticipated, though the null physical skill card made this a lot easier than it should have been. Every Arcana which doesn't get access to one of those is going to have major struggles here, but the Tau so far is hanging in really well. We only got 2 more dungeons left to go, and with that we have some bits of downtime now before the story continues. We go back to Mementos to get rid of the last couple of requests. During this, we also reach level 73, which means we get access to the next Tau persona, and this one might just be the strongest of them all. We're talking about the big, girthy, and always ready Mara. Mara has excellent affinities with no weakness and 4 elements where it doesn't take any damage, 5 if you add the null physical that we carry over during fusion. Not only that, but Mara also gets access to Psycho Force, which is our first tier 4 elemental spell, and to boost that even further, we also get access to Psyamp as well. Overall, just a great persona to use, and I am pretty sure that Mara will be our main persona for the rest of the game. Once we're done with everything, we return to the real world and wait until the deadline. During this, we also hang out with the Twin Wardens in the mall and get a Heat Riser card as a reward. This one will be extremely useful for all solo Joker runs, as it gives us a great way to buff Joker without wasting too many turns in the process. Other than that, there really isn't much we can do in our free time anymore. We pretty much maxed out Joker's SP as well, and with that there is basically nothing useful left to do, so more often than not, we just go to bed early until we get to the deadline. Shido confesses his crimes, and on Christmas Eve the party decides to raise mementos, so let's get going. The first part of Deep Mementos is nothing big to mention. The enemies are all rather easy to take care of, only the first battle against the Holy Grail is a bit of an issue since the incoming damage is quite high. Once we got him into the healing phase though, we can just continue on until Mementos merges with the real world, and we have to make our way to the top by going through the Archangels, starting with Uriel. Uriel opens the battle by summoning 2 angels which can potentially heal him to full with Rakarmdra, so we want to get rid of them before that happens. Luckily they are weak to curse damage, so we can use Maegon to get some decent numbers in. Uriel himself only uses physical attacks, so at least from that point of view, we don't really have to worry about anything. Mara's damage is great, especially when critting, and after getting rid of the resummoned angel, Uriel is down soon after as well, so we only have to clear up what's left. Up next is Raphael, which is a 100% free fight since the only thing he does is charge up and then attack with physical attacks. Because of this, I actually put the battle on auto since we also have a chance to counter his attacks and then just wait it out until he's down as well. The third Archangel is Gabriel, and this might be one of the trickier ones. Gabriel opens up casting Divine Judgment twice, and this is a problem since it reduces Joker current HP by half, and we got no persona with Null Bless in our stock. We could have equipped the Null Bless curse accessory for this fight, but I simply forgot about it, so I wanted to see if we can make it without as well. On every other turn, Gabriel goes for Maziodyne first and Mabufodyne after. If she manages to get a status element to stick, she will usually follow that up with a technical hit to deal extra damage. Luckily the incoming damage from her spells is not that high, so we can easily out-heal them, and once again go to work using charge and one-shot kill on Mara. Unfortunately, I made a slight mistake afterwards. I was thinking that Divine Judgment only reduces your HP by 50%, so technically it shouldn't be able to wipe you even if you're at 1 HP, right? Well, what I didn't know however is that the game presumably rounds the damage up to the next full value, so the 0.5 suddenly becomes 1 and we game over here. During the second attempt, I made sure that we're always good on HP, and Gabriel is down soon after. The final Archangel encounter is against Michael, who once again summons 2 angels at the start of the battle. Since Michael is much harder than Uriel though, I wanted to make sure that the angels can't heal him, so we throw out the Ouija boards we bought on Tanaka's black market shop earlier for curse insta-kills to make sure we can get rid of them before they get too annoying. Michael himself uses both physical and magical attacks, as well as Divine Judgment once again, so we also have to watch our HP here. As for offense, it's once again charge and one-shot kill for the damage, and more Ouija boards in case the angels get resummoned. While we do get somewhat low on HP a couple of times, we're able to get Michael down eventually, and with that the path to the Holy Grail is cleared, so I'd say let's jump right into the battle. Unlike most other challenge runs we have done so far, this battle is not free by any means in a solo setup. Going in with Joker only, this also means that we can't cup the cables to prevent it from healing, so that was the first thing I was afraid of. We stack up a couple of heat rises to get the battle started. Thanks to the buffs, we're able to evade a couple of attacks, though Arrow of Lights hits pretty hard, dealing almost 400 damage to Joker. Once we got a couple of buffs stacked up, we go back to our charge and one-shot kill strategy. The good thing is that the Grail doesn't seem to automatically heal, so I assume this is because of the solo Joker setup, which means we still have a chance to beat it. Still, we're having a hard time keeping up with the healing. We only have a very limited amount of full heals that I want to save for the Yaldabaoth battle, so we mostly use life stones, though those only do a somewhat decent job when it comes to out-healing the incoming damage. Futaba coming in with a clutch heal every once in a while certainly helps a lot too. Still, we're having big troubles getting any kind of damage in since we're mostly occupied either healing or recasting our buffs. In the early stages, we had a decent chance to dodge attacks, but it seems that the Grail, once you get about a third through its HP, will only spam Arrow of Light, which not only is the hardest hitting attack, but usually also the one that gets dodged the least out of everything. We are basically stuck in a loop here, and I honestly don't see us finding a way too quickly to consistently deal damage to the boss. Eventually, we got a bad roll on an Arrow of Light, and we game over here. On attempt number 2, we ran into the very same issue, with the biggest problem being having to constantly heal without a lot of opportunities to get any attacks in. Not being able to have access to something like the Arahan or anything is certainly making this much trickier than I anticipated at first. Like mentioned before, we only have so many full heals, and I expect that we need the majority of them during the Yaldabaoth battle, so we try to optimize our healing with life stones as much as somewhat possible. And while the battle feels like it's taking forever, eventually we get enough evasion luck to get the attacks that we need in and beat the Holy Grail. But this was the easier of the two battles, so I honestly don't have a lot of confidence going into the Yaldabaoth battle. But let's see how we fare here. Similar to before, we open up the battle stacking several heat rises in order to have a decent buff duration. At the beginning, the boss will only use Arrow of Light, which is luckily quite a bit weaker than the one that the Holy Grail used. It also seems that we have a much better dodging chance on that one, so once we're set up with everything, we can start doing damage to the boss. Charge and one-shot kill are once again our means of damage, and after a few attacks, the first dead already gets summoned, and here is where Mara comes into play big time. Two of the 4 summoned parts, which are the gun and the sword, exclusively use physical and gun damage, and with Mara nulling both of those, we basically cut all potential incoming damage from the adds in half already. Unfortunately, they can also inflict status ailments, with Lust for example. It's a 50-50 chance whether we get an action or not, and as far as I know, there is also no immunity to the status as it's exclusive to Yaldabaoth. With Choker nulling its regular attacks though, this is luckily not such a huge issue. From this point on, we also use Mopsiodyne instead of one-shot kill in order to hit all enemies and potentially get rid of the adds every now and then. What I completely forgot though is that Yaldabaoth has access to Dekasha, so all that heat riser stacking we have done right in the beginning of the fight was for naught. As for healing, we once again use life stones and try to save the full heals for emergency situations where Joker gets really low on HP. When the bell gets summoned though, we are quickly starting to run into problems. One reason for that is that the special ailment, which is basically a copy of Madarami's paint from earlier, makes Joker weak to everything. The other one is the fact that the bell also repels Psy damage, so Mopsiodyne is out of the question, and with it being the only strong AoE attack we can use in this battle, this is a problem. Needless to say, we quickly get overwhelmed by the enemies and game over shortly afterwards. By far the biggest issue in both fights was us not being able to properly heal. We don't have a single persona with the Arahan, and we also want to save our items for as long as somewhat possible. And I was thinking about all the possible things I could potentially do right now, when the solution for all of that has been lying in my inventory for a while now. It's an accessory I get in pretty much every playthrough, but to my knowledge have never used a single time so far. I am talking about the Salvation Crown that you can buy for 1 million yen in Tanaka's black market shop. This one comes with, you might have guessed it, the Salvation skill, which is a full HP and ailment heal. And while we lose the gun boost that way, I think this is a much bigger help than the bits of extra damage for one-shot kill, especially considering that we also have Psycho Force that we can use. With those changes, we go back, and of course we have to battle the Holy Grail now again as well. And I think it's easy to see just how much of a help Salvation is in this battle already. We have much more lenience when it comes to setting up buff and sorts, now that we can just fully heal whenever wanted. Since one-shot kill is out of the occasion now, we switch to concentrate and try to get as much damage in with Psycho Force, and just looking at the damage, this is probably the strategy we should have gone for from the get-go. With Salvation, the entire boss battle becomes much easier, and it's only a matter of time before the Grail is down yet again, and we transition back to Yaldabaoth. Just like before, we opened the battle up by stacking a couple of heat rises, though not too many considering we will probably get the Kasha sooner or later anyways. As for damage, we keep the concentrate Psycho Force strategy from the previous battle, as it does great damage here as well. The only problem we now have is that during turns where we use concentrate, we're stuck with Belphegor, which means we're now taking damage from both physical and gun attacks, and this quickly becomes a bit of an issue. Not only that, but once again the Bel's weakness cast gives us a huge problem, and since the paint will also bypass immunities, we even get weakness hits from the gun and game over yet again shortly afterwards. I gotta admit, so far we haven't made much progress yet. I immediately went back in to give it another shot, but the result was rather similar, though on the next 2 attempts it was the lust that trolled me and handed Joker the next game over, so yeah, this is not looking promising. It generally feels like we need some more beef to have a chance, so I decided to go back once again and grind on the Abaddons for some extra experience and also trying to force fusion alarms to further boost the stats on Mara. Not only that, but we also make a couple of changes to its moveset. First of all, we inherit Concentrate from Belphegor in order to not having to switch personas around permanently. This way, we got full physical immunity all the time without having to worry. Next up, we try to inherit Heat Riser from Black Rider for pretty much the exact same reason. Everything we can do to keep Mara in for as much of the battle as possible is going to be a huge help. We are also trying to optimize the Gallows accidents to get as much stats into magic as possible. The finished Mara is now level 99 and has roughly 20 more points in each stat compared to before, so this should hopefully help us quite a bit, and with that we go back to give the boss another try. Usually I would just skip over the Holy Grail battle as it's the same strategy as before, but this time around something weird happens. After the first concentrated Psycho Force, the Grail suddenly started healing? This didn't happen before and left me baffled for a moment. If I had to take a guess, there is probably a damage check for each turn, and once the party does a specific amount of damage, the Grail automatically heals. Because of this, we switched to Mopsiodyne since the lower multiplier results in slightly less damage and seems to barely not trigger the heal, so we should be good to go now and can continue on until the Grail is down yet again and we head back into the Yaldabaoth battle. Increasing Mara's stats definitely helped here, as not only the incoming damage of Arrow of Light is lower compared to before, we also do way more damage now with concentrated Psycho Forces. While the Lust once again trolled us, this time we were able to pull through and make it back to the Bell phase. A concentrated Mopsiodyne also one-shots the gun part now, which is definitely quite the help. Unfortunately, we still can't target the bell, but getting rid of other parts occasionally should also help. For the first time, we make it into the sword phase, which is one of the more relaxed ones since its special ability is doubling the SP cost of spells, something that is no problem considering we got tons of full SP healing items. Like mentioned earlier, the sword also uses physical attacks exclusively, so there is no way it can damage Joker. This time, we even make it all the way to the book phase, which inflicts wrath, something that is not a huge issue since it only reduces defense. The bigger problem though is that, with Yaldabaoth included, we now got 3 parts constantly attacking, so oftentimes we're stuck in a healing cycle, especially when our Heat Riser buff runs out and Joker takes increased damage, and eventually we game over again. Because of this, we make one more adjustment. Since the bell cannot be targeted with Psy damage, we need another source, and if you remember, earlier I talked about how Black Rider gives a Megidolaon card when using the electric chair during Fusion Alarm. Megidolaon might be the perfect candidate for this battle. While the damage multiplier is lower compared to Mopsiodyne with Psyamp, it can hit all targets, which not only results in less attacks due to the reduced adds, it also results in Yaldabaoth not attacking during turns where they get resummoned, so this should give us quite a bit of leeway, not only in terms of recovery, but also when it comes to putting out damage. This time we skip the Grail battle and immediately go back to the main boss to test out our new toys. As long as only the gun is out, we stick to Mopsiodyne for the higher damage, but as soon as the bell gets summoned, Megidolaon is the way to go now. We get a lucky counter to wipe the gun, and 2 Megidolaons are also enough to get rid of the bell. Luckily, the adds only revive with 50% HP, so going forward, a single concentrated Megidolaon should be enough to get rid of all the resummoned parts. When the sword comes out, the gun gets resummoned as well, but as long as the bell is still down, we shouldn't have a lot of issues when it comes to incoming damage. When the book gets summoned, it once again is by itself, as everything else is gone at that point, so we can easily set everything up again and throw out another Megidolaon as soon as we're ready. At this point we get a bit unlucky as the bell gets resummoned the moment our Heat Riser runs out, so we're now running into a similar issue as before, where we are having troubles getting everything set up again. We get a bit lucky and dodge several attacks, which is pretty much the only reason recovery was even possible, and another Megalodon takes care of all 4 parts at once. We now enter the hunger phase, which is probably the most chill out of all, since it's one of the statuses that can be recovered with salvation, so nothing much to worry about here. The next one is the jealousy phase, which is also not an issue on the solo Joker setup, as it only works in combination with other party members, so we can continue on just like before, trying to keep the ass in check, while also damaging the boss at the same time. The last ad phase is the counter phase, which is not a huge problem either, as we just use those turns to either reapply buffs or heal Joker, and with that we're already approaching the end of the fight, and you know what that means. Eventually, Yell the buff will resummon all parts with full health and charge up a huge Race of Control attack. There is literally no way we can get rid of all the parts before the attack, and because I am smart and also forgot to count turns, I healed when I should have guarded, so this means that we're probably dead now. Unless Joker manages to dodge the attack. Not gonna lie, this was just stupid luck. We should have definitely game over here. Anyways, we got a couple of turns now before he charges up for the next time, so ideally we try to get rid of some of the parts now. Yell the buff charges up again, we throw out a concentrated Megalodon on turn 1 and another normal one on turn 2 and are barely able to get rid of 2 parts, which means Race of Control should do less damage now, and as you can see, we're able to survive it just fine. So this is going to be the strategy going forward. Make sure to be healed up and buffed, and once he charges up Race of Control again, make sure to get rid of at least 2 of his parts in order to survive the incoming damage. This works out perfectly for the following charge where only the book is alive, as well as the next one, and this one is actually already enough to beat Yell the buff and successfully complete the vanilla portion of the game. And I'm gonna be honest here, I am pretty sure that this fight is going to be the point where multiple other Arcana runs are going to end. We have a really strong setup here with a Mara that nulls half of the ad's damage and still barely managed to pull through. I just can't see every other Arcana getting through here as well, but that is a problem for future Ragnar. Current Ragnar is just incredibly happy that we made it and that we can now approach the final part of the game. We celebrate Christmas with Futaba and Sojiro, New Year hits, things get weird again, and we get to enter the final palace with Kasumi and Akechi. Since we can't remove them from the party however, they have to stay in, but must guard at all times. The battle against Hastur is not a big issue. We set up Concentrate, Heat Riser, and then go to work with Megalodon. We do that until we get to the scripted showtime part and are already done with the first segments. Upon returning to the palace, we have to fight Sumire now, which is free, since all she does is physical attacks, so we can safely put the battle on auto again. The party returns for the battle against Sandria, and this one is quite a bit tricky. Sandria regularly absorbs the adds to heal up, and with us having no decent means of AoE nuke skills, we're having troubles getting good damage into the enemies. While a concentrated Mopsiodine does enough damage to get rid of both adds, it doesn't do the most damage to the boss, especially when she regularly recovers via absorbing. At this point I did find out about another mechanic in this battle that was previously unknown to me. After killing off the adds multiple times, they just stopped getting resummoned after a while. I don't know whether we just got very lucky or if this is an actual mechanic to the battle. Either way, with the boss now being by herself, we can easily take it down with our attacks and continue on. Since we have no further confidence to increase or third awakenings to get, we can basically return to the palace as soon as we get the chance and continue on. We grab the last treasure demon of the game and are then up against the first mini-boss, which is a Chimera and the Dionysus. For this battle, we don't need to worry about much. Chimera literally can't hurt Joker, and Dionysus barely does any damage as well. Both go down to a single concentrated Mopsiodine, and we can already continue on. During dungeon progression, Joker also reaches level 90, which means we can go back to the Velvet Room to fuse the final and ultimate tower persona Mada. As you can see, Mada is very heavily fire focused, but also gets very other useful skills such as Fire Amp, Enduring Soul and Spellmaster. While its affinities are not too shabby, Mada can't keep up with our girthy boy Mara, so it will remain as our main persona. Thanks to the final treasure demon carrying tier 4 single target spells though, we will use it during fusion to carry over as many of them as somewhat possible. The plan is for Mada to take care of the tentacles during the Maruki battle, with Mara taking the job as big DPS player when it comes to damaging the boss itself. With that out of the way, it is time for the last mini-boss battle of this segment against everyone's favorite unpronounceable enemies. And while we often struggled here in the past, with the Tower Arcana this is not a big issue. Again we buff and concentrate and then use Psycho Force to deal good damage to the enemies. We take out the mage first, since the other enemy only uses physical and gun attacks which we both null, so once the first enemy is down, it's only a couple of more turns until we take the last one out as well. Nothing big to mention here. With that, we are already done with part 1 of the palace, and now have to return to Mementos to go through a new area. We ignored the majority of random encounters as there really isn't that much to gain here. On the way, we make sure to get the last couple of requests done as they give decent rewards, and once we reach the top, we are ready to head back into the palace again. The first mini-boss of the palace's second half is Surt. Usually, we would try to get a freeze here and then attack with physical attacks, but since we barely got any of those, we use items to inflict Dizzy, and then throw out a technical concentrated Psycho Force for huge damage. 2 of those casts are already enough to get Surt down, and we continue on to the Willseed Gatekeeper, which is just a regular Fafnir that you also encounter throughout the dungeon. Just like with Surt before, we throw a Dizzy Vial and then hit technical damage using Psycho Force, and that's pretty much it already. The final mini-boss of the game is Siegfried, who mostly attacks with physical attacks, so again not a big issue. He does use Maziodyne every once in a while, but even if it hits, it doesn't really do any damage, so this is something that we can completely ignore. Like in the previous few fights, we try to get technical damage with our Psi attacks, and yeah, that is actually it. Continue on until the enemy is down, and the path to the final boss is free. We enter Mementos one last time to clear the last 2 requests, and are then ready for the final day to approach. We mostly skip time here and go to sleep early since there is nothing left to do, though I made sure to save on a separate slot in case we need to come back here for further grinding or other things. Past boss fights have shown that sometimes we need to adjust our setup quite a bit, so I wanted to make sure we have options if needed. We hand over the calling card to Maruki, and with that we are back into the palace for the final showdown. The accessory of our choice is the Saint Hermeline's badge, which nulls all blast and curse attacks. Maruki either attacks with physical or nuke damage in phase 1, and physical and blast damage in phase 2, so with the accessory, we can make sure to null all incoming damage except his charged attacks. Now, as most of you know, we have to get rid of the tentacles first in order to damage Maruki, and here is already the first problem. Our regular attack does less than half damage to the physically weak tentacle, and even our magic attacks are not necessarily a one-shot with just Heat Riser up. The plan here is to damage all of them on turn 1, and then take them out on turn 2 and deal full damage to Azathoth. By throwing an additional cleaning spray for an AoE debuff, we can guarantee that we can get the physical weak part down in 2 hits, as well as deal increased damage to the boss, and it's only a bit until Azathoth starts growing, and we enter phase 2. Phase 2 has some other nasty surprises though. The worst one being Evil Smile, which can fear Joker and easily throw off our game plan. Another thing I should probably mention is that we still have the Counter-Strike armor equipped. While we need to get rid of the tentacles in order to deal proper damage to Azathoth, repelled attacks are not influenced by the damage reduction and deal full damage to the boss. And while this is not necessarily huge numbers, it's gonna stack up over time and might just be the little boost that we need to win. For phase 2, our strategy now becomes a little different. The best way to deal damage to Azathoth is via one-shot kill, so we use some of the strength up of Fudas we have gotten to set up a charge, then throw out a cleaning spray to lower everybody's defense, and once we have gotten rid of all the tentacles, we throw out a charged one-shot kill for big damage. Due to us having to wipe the tentacles with magic first, this strategy requires a physical skill to finish the turn off, as the concentrate will be gone as soon as we throw out the first magic attack. And while this setup overall is not too shabby, it takes a lot of turns until we get to do damage. The charge item, the heat riser, the cleaning spray, all of those take time, so even in the best case scenario, we can only attack every 4th turn, and that's not even counting in the evil smile, which could potentially screw our setup and prolong it even further. Now you might think that this is not necessarily a problem since we're pretty much immune to all of his regular attacks anyways. Unfortunately, there is a little issue with that. If you remember the walk-up battles, we only had a total of roughly 50 turns before the boss started to spam Megadolan for huge damage. And guess what? The very same mechanic is back for the final boss fight as well, so there is a certain sense of urgency to this battle if we want to be able to get through here. And needless to say, this is exactly what happened on our first attempt. But the problem generally wasn't that we got mercy killed by Maruki. The real issue is that we're not even halfway through Azathoth's HP when we get to that point, and that is a huge problem. Sure, we can optimize our strategy a bit and try to save some turns or get better setups going, but with such a big pool of HP remaining on the boss, I am 100% sure that we cannot beat Maruki this way. There are still a couple of improvements that we can do, so we reload the save from earlier and try to optimize things. First of all, we visit the airsoft shop to buy the strongest weapon we can grab for Joker. If we're able to beat the physical weak tentacle with a single attack after a defense buff, this already frees up quite some turns. Another thing we can do is switch the accessory back to the demonic device for gun amp. This way Joker is no longer invincible, but the 50% boost to one-shot kill is a must-have if we want to stand any chance in this boss fight. Last but not least, the most annoying thing to do is to return to mementos and further grind stats with both Mara and Mada. And I'm not even going to try and get a couple of stats and then head back in to try the boss again, since we are way too far off for that strategy to work. Because of this, we straight up max out every single stat on both of them. While we could have probably gone for just strength, magic and endurance, I also went for agility for the increased chance to dodge now that we can actually get hit, as well as luck to reduce the hit rate from Evil Smile as well. This is basically everything we can do in this setup. If this won't work, the run's probably dead right at the final boss. So let's see where this is going. The first thing I immediately noticed in phase 1 was that we are doing way more damage with physical attacks compared to before. This means that with a cleaning spray we should be able to one-shot all the tentacles and immediately go for damage on Azathoth. The wiki says the Megadolan turn counter gets reset after the transition, but after it was wrong on multiple occasions in the past, I'm not gonna trust this one, so we want to make sure to keep phase 1 as short as possible still. Eternal Radiance now does damage to Joker, but thanks to Mara resisting Blast attack, it's usually less than 100, so nothing big to worry about. Other than that, our strats are just as before. Set up charge, heat riser and cleaning spray and then throw out the damage. Thanks to the increased stats and the gun amp accessory, one-shot kill also does way more damage now, so this is already looking a lot more promising. Evil Smile also feels like it actually connects quite a bit less often than it did before, so maxing out all stats certainly seems like it was a good idea. Futaba occasionally coming in with a heal also helps reducing the turns needed to keep our HP up, so we can focus on setting up and dealing damage. We also hope for several counter-strikes to trigger. While it's only a 15% chance to happen, those 4 or 5 reflects we get throughout the battle add up and might just be what we need. We get to the point where Maruki also charges up for his big attack for the first time, and instead of guarding, we switch to Mada to eat it and trigger the Enduring Soul. I'd rather continue setting up and dealing damage with the Enduring Soul triggering now, than right at the end of the battle when it's pretty much lost anyways once the Megadolan spam starts. All those changes made quite the difference and we're slowly starting to get Maruki into low HP. At this point, we probably only need one more cycle to get him down, but unfortunately it's just not quite enough yet, and Maruki once again make the lounge Shoka into oblivion. And while we did lose yet again, we got really close to beating him this time, so with a bit more luck when it comes to Evil Smile, or maybe one or two more counter strikes, we might be able to get him down this way, so there is some hope to this strategy. I was also checking my inventory to see whether or not we maybe have some useful physical skills that could help us during phase 1, but unfortunately, there are no useful physical skills available at all. During this though, I noticed that we still have the high counter skill card we have gotten from a momentous request earlier, so we slapped that on Tamara as well. While counter strike and high counter don't stack, high counter has a 20% chance to reflect physical attacks, which means that on average, we should be able to get one more reflect in that way throughout the duration of the fight. This is only a very minor increase, but it might just be what we need to push us over the edge. Now, I'm not going to go through the entire battle again, so we just skip towards the end of attempt number 2 with the new strategy. We are once again very close to beating Maruki, but he already has thrown out his last voice line, which indicates that we only got like 2 or 3 more turns left to go. And just as we were setting up for the final blow, we get feared again. And because this game loves me, not only was Choka not able to act on the following turn, but we also got the rare 2-turn fear where Choka wasn't able to act yet again, which Maruki swiftly follows up with making the on the following turn, wiping us yet again. And at this point I was just laughing. I knew this could be done. We basically had him there if it wasn't for the ridiculous fear lock right at the end. Instead of becoming demotivated, we went right back into the battle for attempt number 3, and this one was not looking very promising either. We got horrible luck throughout the entire fight when it came to reflecting physical attacks, so I really was not expecting much to come out of here. What I did notice though was that there were barely any evil smiles that connected, and if they did, Detox often triggered clearing it immediately, so this is certainly a huge help. Again, we eat the second charged attack with Enduring Soul to finish setting up. Maruki's almost done at this point, but I knew that we only had like 1 or 2 more turns left to go before the next Mega Down happens, and with him being really low on HP, I decided to not throw the charge of Fuda in favor of saving an additional turn, and this paid off as we are finally able to get Azathoth down and transition into the next fight. Good grief, this one definitely deserves the title of final boss. But we are not done yet, as phase 3 is up next, and going in there I was pretty sure that we're not going to stand any chance in a solo setup. Maruki takes reduced damage in this form, and with Choka needing at least 3 turns to set up everything before going for the attack, pretty much everybody else was down at this point. And if this wasn't bad enough already, once he transitions into phase 2, he will use Grand Palm, which deals huge damage, and we basically have no way to keep up with the damage, while also trying to heal and set up at the same time. Because of this, I decided to make one last change to the rules for the final battle here, in that party members will be allowed to use items against Giant Azathoth. They still all have their basic equipment on, so they're not going to survive for long, but the Magatamas deal enough damage to push him into the next phase faster, therefore giving him more targets to choose from when going for a Grand Palm. While this is not necessarily what I had in mind, I was already pretty certain going in that with our current rule set, there is no way that Choka can do this in a solo setup, and since we get a forced 4-member party for this fight anyways, might as well. We did everything else successfully, so I think we can let that slide. Once phase 3 Maruki is down, the challenge is pretty much over as phase 4 is scripted anyways, and once we're done with that as well, we have one last final fist fight with Maruki to end the challenge for good and successfully beat it. And that is it, everybody. The second run of the Arcana challenge, with the first solo Choka one, is successfully completed. And oh boy, if this is a preview for what's to come with other solo Choka Arcana runs, we are in for quite a treat. While I am very much aware that the majority of you guys who voted for the tower just wanted to see me suffer because of the very late entry of Belphegor, I gotta admit that the Tower Arcana overall is actually really strong. With Belphegor, we got access to concentrate really early. With Mara, we had a persona with excellent elemental affinities, and the null physical skill card from the Cheating Gamer request was probably the biggest game changer in the entire run. All that being said, where does this put the tower in the tier list? After seeing how much we already struggled with a rather strong overall Arcana, I am pretty sure we'll have several other Arcanas that won't be able to make it all the way to the end of the game. Because of this, we will probably make it so that everybody that gets past the Elder buff is at least in tier E, and everybody that manages to beat the game is at least in tier D or something. With the tower, I think a C tier ranking is definitely justified. While the Tower Arcana overall has some real good stuff to use, the exhaustingly long early grind we had to do in Madarame's Palace definitely plays into this, and even though we had a much easier time after, this obviously influences the ranking quite a bit. Still, I would think that tier C is a good fit for the tower. I honestly don't see any of the solo choke Arcanas making the top 3 tiers, since those will most likely be reserved for party member runs, so keeping that in mind, a C tier ranking is actually pretty damn good. As always, let me know in the comments on which Arcana you want to see next. I'm not quite sure whether I want to go for another solo choker one next or whether we go back to a party member one, so I'll definitely take all of your comments into account. With that being said, special thanks once again go out to this video sponsor WeMod, as well as all our top channel supporters Nervarel, Laura Nemeth, Shirker, and Matthew Frack, and also all the other channel members and patrons. Becoming a channel member or joining the Patreon gives you 48-hour early access to all videos, among other small perks, so if you want to support the channel even more, there are plenty of ways to do so. That is it for me today. I hope you enjoyed the run as much as I did, and I hope to see you all next time for another Arcana run. Until then, take care.